Welcome back to Car Design Dialogues. My name's James McLachlan and I'm the editor of Car Design News. I'm here with Robin Page, who's Senior Vice President of Design Volvo since the summer of 2017. And I'm going to speak to Robin about the concept of human-centric design and what that means to Volvo. Robin, I'm going to take you back to the carefree days of 2019 when we had no cares in the world whatsoever. And start with a quote that you gave to a publication then about the brand and human-centric design. And it ran something like this. The brand's about human-centric design, where if we're staying true to the principles of Scandinavian design, it's about stripping away the visual noise and taking away unnecessary aggression. So with that quote in mind, I thought you could unpack the idea of human-centric design, what it means in general terms, and how it should manifest itself in automotive design.
Okay. Well, first, hello, James. It's good to be on here talking to you. Yeah, I mean, I'd kind of break that down really into two elements. One first is probably Scandinavian design, and then really what that means to human-centric design. I mean, Scandinavian design, as a lot of the design community understand, is really about getting down to the pure elements and yeah, definitely stripping away the visual noise, having a very good, well-resolved solution to the design, getting the best out of the materials that we're using, and really solving the problem in the smartest way that we can. So we spend a lot of time really getting to the purity of the design problem. And then if you look at human-centric design, I think that's fundamental to Volvo because, I mean, it goes right back to the core of Volvo at the start of the company back in 1927, which was about designing for people. And a lot of that, of course, was focused on safety, but it was also focused on delivering on people's needs. And that was providing a vehicle that was for their lifestyle, that was functional and has a very high element of utility, so that people use it to enhance their lives and to, you know, enjoy their pastimes, maybe travel to their summer house. So it was a lot about providing good human-centric design and designing for people. So that's how I'd kind of split those two elements.
And if we look at, I suppose, when we talk about Volvos of the past, we seem at the moment, Volvo currently seems to be quite a long way aesthetically from those days. And I wondered how you sort of marry those two, that evolution of the brand to some of the more entrenched views of Volvo from years past.
Yeah, I mean, what we focused on, of course, when you look at a heritage, is taking the best bits out of the heritage, the bits that people really treasure and enjoy. And when we started our current range of cars, we did three concepts, and they were based on one of our favorite, the P1800, that really had an emotional element to it and some iconic, what we call Volvo DNA in there. So I would always look at it that we kind of look back at the past, but then really point forward with modern design, capturing the kind of flavor and essence of the brand, basically. And this plays out as well with the interior design. It's really focusing on capturing the best elements of the brand, but executing them in a modern way so that it's relevant for people today. For example, if you take the needs of people in the past, it was a lot about a large trunk area to put all their equipment and fit the family in. Now it's more of a focus on connecting with people's lives in terms of their digital device, making sure we have fantastic connectivity and seamless experience for the users. We still focus on the family, of course, but providing them with modern solutions of utility. So it's really just, yeah, designing for the time and for the customers that are relevant at this point.
And in practical terms, how do you sort of apply these human-centric design principles? I mean, I wondered whether it was an iterative process or incremental process.
Yeah,
complete guesswork.
There was an element of that, that's for sure. Now, I think as with every project, it starts with a level of research and really connecting with our customers. Then that turns into a brief. At the same time, we're also working on the design. So we're creating kind of themes and a very kind of modern approach to the design, but that's combined then with a brief that's really about the customer and their needs. And then, for instance, the XC40 is a great example of how that process worked. We knew that our customers wanted a very big focus on a kind of utility and storage areas and clever solutions in the trunk for their shopping bags. That came up in the research, and that became a real task for the design team to start to come up with these smart solutions. And it sounds kind of simple, but actually you really need to focus on these elements. I mean, for instance, taking the speakers out of the door to allow big storage areas, having a closed bin area for tissues, having a hook for your bag on the passenger side, in the trunk area, providing 3 hooks for bags in there. It was just, these were the important things that came out of our research, and these were the tasks and detail that we then started to dig into with the design team.
I suppose that touches on something that we all kind of really love about Scandinavian design, and perhaps why it's become such a very potent force in everyday life. It's the little details that have been thought out. You know, the idea of having a kind of a flat, no load lip on the trunk. You know, these little hooks you were talking about for shopping bags or have you. And I presume, yes, it is the product of lots and lots of customer research. Yeah.
I mean, it's kind of, as with every design kind of problem, you have to understand what the customer needs, for sure. You also have to do a little prediction and crystal ball exercise of what will they want in the future. And that's, of course, part of the design task. And you can see things like, of course, what's becoming super important is people have their personal devices on them, and they want to connect with the car before even getting into the car. They want to maybe set their seat settings, their temperature, etc. And then when they're in the car, it connects with their music and applications, etc. So we have to really think about where the users are going in the future. So it's not just literally just storage areas and clever solutions. It's also about connecting with the customers and their personal devices as well.
And this idea of connectivity has become sort of almost like it's what we need to be thinking about when we talk about integration of technology into transport. And I was looking at one of your concepts before where we started speaking, and I think, let me just check the name of it, because here we go. So it's 360 concept that Volvo developed, which was very interesting because, you know, watching some of the short sort of explanatory films on it, there was this idea that you would connect not only to your devices and your phones and your music and this idea of personalization of the space, but also to the city around you. And I wondered whether you could explain a bit more about the thinking there.
Yeah, we're actually, I'm sat here in our brand experience center, and we have the 360 concept around the corner. So maybe I walk over now and sit in front of it so you can see the vehicle, and there I'll start to talk around the detail behind that project. So let me walk over and we'll catch up in a second, James.
Wonderful. Okay, Robin, so before anyone thinks someone's parked a car in your living room, perhaps maybe you could explain a little bit as to where you are at the moment and the concept, the 360 concept sat behind you.
Yeah, no problem, James. Yeah, we're in the Volvo Brand Experience Center, and this was a place that we've put the 360C concept. So it's a really place that people can come and visit and see it. This was a really interesting project because what we did was really explore human-centric design with a vision, looking into the future with full autonomous drive. This was a car that was basically no driver and could be basically suited to lots of different experiences. So thinking about your question earlier about how we connect this, the idea really was that a customer could go on their personal device and basically order the car, and it would turn up in front of them, and then they would literally step in. But their preferences and their settings would be automatically connected with the car itself. So we played around with 4 different human-centric kind of principles. So we explored different user needs. The first one was basically a commuting car, which was basically taking you from your home to the work. It could be one person, it could be 2, or actually 4 people. So it would basically fulfill the needs of a desk to work at, a screen that you could basically be entertained or catch up with your work. Then the second scenario was actually an office. So this was an alternative to an office space. So if you imagine working in London, and instead of renting an office space, you would, for that occasional meeting, hire this car and meet a client and actually have a meeting in the car. So we explored then, what do you need in an office? A coffee machine, a table, a screen to present on. So we enable the kind of this exploration of a vehicle that's also an office. The third one was a party vehicle, and this was basically an idea to pick up your client maybe or friends from a hotel and take them to a restaurant, and then start the evening experience actually in the vehicle, having drinks and snacks and entertainment before you get to the restaurant. And then the most interesting one was actually an alternative to the short-haul flight, and that was a sleeping car. So basically this vehicle would pick you up from your home or office, and then you would drive through the night to your destination. So maybe it's a Gothenburg to Stockholm, or crossing America from city to city. And the idea was that it would basically enable you to put in your bag. There's be some pre-ordered food. After you finished maybe catching up on work or watching a movie, it would turn into a full bed experience, and then you could even watch the northern lights above your head. So it was really an exploration of these future user needs, and playing out and exploring what full autonomous drive would bring.
And I wonder whether, this is, obviously fascinating stuff that's sort of deconstructing and reassembling our ideas about what a car actually is. It's a party, it's a place to entertain, it's a place to work, it's a place to sleep, long distance travel. I wondered, well, 2 things. One, where you looked for your design inspiration in terms of aesthetics. If we're talking about long distance travel, was there anything from the aeronautics that fed into the idea of the design? And beyond that, I suppose this is probably horizon stuff, and I wonder how much it feeds into the sort of current Volvo range at the moment, or even sort of short-term 3 to 5 year plans.
No, it's interesting. We did look into air travel, especially with the sleeping car, because there's with a full autonomous drive, it creates this opportunities to explore more of a living room, and this kind of, basically you're not sat in front of a steering wheel, so you can now, the customer can explore different things, do different things, and therefore we had to design and think in a different way. So really opened up that channel.
I wondered how sort of a concept like this is obviously, it's packed full of ideas and possibilities, but I wondered in a more short-term sort of view, how some of the ideas here are feeding into what you guys are doing at Volvo at the moment, and perhaps over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. No, the concepts are really part of an exploration for us in terms of trying ideas and really seeing what the public's reaction is to those ideas. And of course, we always learn, and it influences our work for the production cars, and that's really important. It's also an opportunity for us to sell some of those ideas to the business, and really push the brand from a design point of view and an execution point of view. So there's always value in looking at these concepts, even though it relies a lot on the technology to support it. But again, the technology is growing all the time, so it's a good chance to try and put a stake in the ground and say, okay, that's how we would like to use that future technology, and really develop it in this way. And the reason we want to do that is to make the user experience even better. And that has a big value to the business.
As we're on the subject of technology, the move towards EV, it seems to be sort of the thing in the industry at the moment, where it's the challenge that everyone's facing all at the same time. And I wondered how you see human-centric design, or that idea and ethos feeding into the sort of the EV revolution, and what how far perhaps you could explain a little bit as well about how long it will be before we see a pure sort of EV platform for Volvo.
Yeah, I mean, a big part of our programs is sustainability, and part of sustainability, of course, is electrification. So we're very focused on electrification being part of our future, and of course we're developing platforms that can support that. Part of the transition, though, is that obviously some of our products are still using combustion engines, and then some are electric. So we're in that transition phase, as a lot of car companies are. The interesting thing, though, is with electrification also comes this enhancement as well with the digital interface. So all the time we're playing around with new technologies, with the user experience. Again, how the phone connects with the car, how we have kind of eye tracking sensors, cameras on the outside of the car, and then obviously the user experience inside the car. And it's all part of this development now to make super modern cars that are relevant for our future customers.
Okay, Robin. So I know that the 360 concept isn't the only concept that Volvo have been working on, and I'm aware of the other project called TIO, and I wondered if you could unpack a little bit about some of the ideas behind that particular concept.
Yeah, Project TIO was basically a next stage to the 360C. So the 360 was basically based on a bigger vehicle, which you can see behind me anyway, accommodating 4 people or a bed for this overnight travel. But then we looked at a scenario inside a city, so more of a short journey, 10-minute scenario, and how would basically the human-centric design evolve around that short journey. So with this project, we looked at literally a 10-minute journey. So with that, you would want very quick and easy access into it. So we actually went for quite a tall vehicle that you would literally just walk into. And then because it's such a short journey, you wouldn't actually sit down, but you would kind of lean against a seat and then have a full user experience in front of you. So this was a full screen, and you'd be able to then either, again, watch a movie or listen to music, but you could also watch the journey ahead of you projected onto the road, or you could maybe learn something interesting about the city that you're traveling in. So we could use that screen, that full-length screen, in a very interactive way. And we thought for a short 10-minute journey, that would be perfect scenario for a really kind of easy user experience, using the technology in a new way, and again, just exploring the needs of customers, looking as a long-term vision into the future, so that it influences our thinking now on our current products.
Could you explain a little bit about how it's influenced your thinking? Were there things that you discovered from this project that were news to you, or was it confirming some of the ideas that you'd had?
Yeah, I mean, what we're always looking for is new ways to interact with the screen. So we're starting to explore basically the content of the screen and how we would move, and basically we're seeing that customers want more than one thing on a screen in order to do. They're interested in, watching the movie, listening to music, also what is the weather doing, and we're starting to really understand this next generation of multitaskers, basically.
Yes.
So that was one part of it. Also, just interesting to see what full autonomous vehicles bring to you. What does it feel like in this new environment of how do you connect with the car? How would you order it? How would you ingress and come out of it again? And I think this really inspires the team to look at modern design thinking, and always a chance as well to come up with a new design language for the future. So it's a really interesting project, just a vision really to set the scene for the future.
And is this future? It's always difficult, and it's always a kind of double-edged sword, I suppose, and to ask to predict anything in future cast. But do you think this is a sort of future that's been talked about for quite a long time? The idea of autonomous vehicles and flying vehicles, even. I mean, how far away are we realistically from this being a sort of everyday reality?
It's a good question of how far away we are. I mean, it relies on so much. There's one thing is the technology, of course. There's the other thing about the infrastructure of cities and government policies, etc. What we're seeing really as a design team is that it's going to be I'd say a stepping stone journey into the future. There's going to be little steps that gradually build and build and build into this scenario. And in order to walk that path, you need to almost put a stake in the ground and say, okay, that's an interesting study of where we could go. How do we start to get there, and how do we use these technologies in a smart way, so that we avoid the trap of just adding technology, adding feature, and then overloading the customer with a bad experience. So this allows us clarity to say, okay, that's what we're aiming for. How do we get there using this technology as it develops over time?
And I suppose that feeds into this idea of not overcomplicating things, paring things back. We come back to this human-centric, this Scandinavian idea of kind of simplicity. One thing I am curious about is this the idea that design and car designers, so much of our interaction relationship with vehicles is an emotive one. It's quite a powerful pull. The shape of the car, you may like the grille or the kind of the way the back end looks, I wondered how you guys are going to be shaping this autonomous future. What sort of things are going to be important, and how do we maintain that kind of emotional connection with our transport if it is something that's a bit more ubiquitous?
Yeah, I know that's a really good question. I think first one is probably the identity of the car, and we spend a lot of time studying, especially the light signature, for instance. In our case, the Thor's hammer and the rear light signatures, where people can recognise immediately that it's a Volvo. You can see on the car behind here that on the rear we have the vertical lights, and then it kind of crosses over and drops down, and on the front you can see the Thor's hammer on the front of the car. And this is about having a strong identity, and also the front especially gives a face to the car, and that's also a really important part of, you can do very clean design, but it still needs to have a facial expression that people can connect with. We're always, as humans, looking for a face in an object. I mean, you can sometimes see a coffee cup and you can see two eyes and a mouth. We're always trying to find that identity in that character. And of course, that's a big part of future design as well. I think it'll be a real shame to start creating forms that people can't connect with and have an emotion with. So that's a big part of our design philosophy going forward.
Great. And moving on a little bit towards more sort of tangible goals, I suppose, and in terms of, I know sustainability is always been a sort of a huge thing for Volvo, and I wondered how this sort of feeds into the interior design, how materials sort of inform design choices, and how the sort of carbon footprint of products inform your interior design. And yes, if you could speak a little bit about that would be fantastic.
Yeah, sure. Well, it's probably a good time then to move away from the backdrop of the exterior and go and sit inside. So let me move and we'll have a look inside the car. So this is the interior of the 360C concept. It's actually a bed, and you can basically transfer from a normal seating position, and then it goes into full flatbed. We also, in this box here, we have the area for your bag to go, and also an area that you can have the food prepared, so it's already preset for you. In front of me is a table and a screen, so basically you've got this whole living room come bedroom experience for this overnight journey. So it's a really interesting study for interior design, but also color materials.
When it comes to sort of color and materials, what are the sort of the fundamental principles? I mean, how do you adhere to the human-centric idea, and at the same time bear in mind this idea of sustainability and kind of material choice and color palettes?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really important part of our next generation of cars. And also, of course, in this concept is about sustainability, sustainable materials. It's a huge focus for us all, I think. We've tackled it in maybe a different way, in terms of that we're looking at more natural materials. That's a really big part of Scandinavian design. You see it in furniture, in architecture. And that's an element that we really want to bring into our future cars. The first one, I suppose, is I'm sat on here, is a seat made of a wool blend. So that's looking at the natural material of wool. We've played around with linen. My feet are based on here on a driftwood floor. So this is taking an influence from washed up driftwood from the coast. And we've put that into the deco materials of our current cars as we are. And if you look at our current generation, I mean, we have the XC40, the carpet area, the door panels, the headlining, the parcel shelf, they're all made from sustainable materials. I mean, for the carpets and doors, it's actually 97% plastic recycled bottles, and then 3% is the color. So the majority of the interior now is made from recycled materials. What we're looking at here in a future concept is natural materials, and ultimately what we want to get to is recycled natural materials, and that it will be super sustainable. So we're playing around here with visions, so that we can then work with our suppliers and create these materials for the next generation of cars.
And how do you go about ensuring that this is the materials really are as sustainable as they purport to be? I know it can be quite a difficult thing. You hear multiple claims about the incredible sustainable nature of the materials, but sometimes when you look a bit closer, it isn't quite what it seems to be. But I wonder if you could speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really challenging part of the work, and of course our purchase teams are very focused on that, of working with suppliers that and looking at the chain of the supplier as well. So from the first touch point on the material, from extracting it from the earth or creating it from different materials, it needs to be a really true story. So I know that our purchase team are very, very close to that. So that we have full confidence that these materials are what they are. And it's challenging. I mean, it's a real commitment and task for the company to be this sustainable journey, and to make it a big part of the company philosophy.
In terms of aesthetic, there's a very famous sort of Dieter Rams quote that is about good design, fading in, being like a good English butler. It's there when you need it, but it fades into the background. But I suppose going back to our point earlier about the emotional response to design and materials, how do you ensure that it's a memorable experience without becoming too sort of reticent and fading into the background and becoming sort of, I don't know, was forgotten about?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think technology can really play a big part in this, and that's where using technology in the right way, that it enhances your experience. And there is that butler experience of it's predicting your next move and kind of memorized what your pattern was from before. And I think that has definitely got a place in the future, and that's what we're focusing on, as a really good user experience, that using the cameras and the technology, and also the interface, that we can know who's getting into the car before you've even got to the car, preset your mirrors, your seats, the temperature that you always like the car at, and your music choice, etc. But of course, there needs to be an easy way to do that fine adjustment, because we're humans. We're not completely into our normal patterns every day, so you need an easy way to just do that fine adjustment. But the more we can do, that the technology is working ahead of you and with you, rather than you having to explore thousands of options and features every time, that in the end you just can't be bothered, or you just feel stupid. That's not where we want to be as a brand. We want to be in the place that the customer doesn't even think about what's going on. It just feels great and it's exactly what they want. And then it's super easy to understand a fine adjustment to basically tune it if you're in a different mood to the day before. So that's how we want to hit the kind of user experience. But then in terms of the opportunities that are opened up through the fact that you have autonomous drive coming, electrification, they open up these really interesting places to make the design even more fantastic and explore even better things and new things to do. So I think technology opens up really nice opportunities for design.
We spoke right at the start actually about how you see Volvo's evolution and its kind of its resonance with the past, but obviously its moved future. But how you drawn on the model like the P80 and this kind of this ethos that's underpinned the brand for all these years. So we talked a little bit about sort of similarities, but I wonder what you think is going to set Volvo apart from its heritage over the next 20 or 30 years. What is it that it's going to be a new strand or a new idea about Volvo?
I mean, let's maybe first touch on what I think we'll always hold on to, and that's our element of safety.
No, that's a good place to start.
No, I mean, there's definitely safety in human-centric design, and this Scandinavian design philosophy is in the DNA, and we'll always have that with us and carry that forward. I think as well that it's important not to ignore your heritage, that we should always kind of look back over the shoulder, reflect on it, pick up the bits that people identify as the important bits for the design language. But of course, we need to be really modern with executing modern design, fresh design. And I think as well, with electrification, that opens up an opportunity to be even more different to the previous models, because we have different needs from electrification. I mean, it changes the whole front of the car. It changes the interior space because it gives us more room and an ability to play more with the flat floor. And also the user experience is completely different to what it was 10, 20 years ago. So these influences create modern design anyway. But at the end of the day, you need to stand next to it and say, yes, this is a Volvo. It's not another brand. We're not designing whatever we want. We're true to the brand. So you have to keep the fundamentals of the DNA in there somewhere.
You've taken us through some of the concepts there, but I wondered sort of in more immediate terms, what we can expect to see from Volvo now and in the near future, very near future.
Yeah, I know. As I said, the concepts are really good for us to position a vision for the future and to explore some new design language, explore new materials, etc. And always we're looking for, okay, which elements of these can we pull into our next range of cars? And especially with electrification coming so quickly, we're exploring, of course, what does the new front face of Volvo look like? And how does a new expression of the Thor's hammer or the light signatures on the rear look like? So it's a great opportunity for us to play around with some ideas, and you'll start to see links to these concept cars in our future products, which is for us really exciting. Really looking forward to launching these cars, and also the principles we've talked around in terms of really enhancing that user experience, looking at sustainable materials. It's all part of the ingredients of the next generation of Volvo. So you'll have to watch this space, and hopefully you can see these cars soon.
Robin, thanks very much for speaking to us and being part of Car Design Dialogues. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
No, very much so.
Good.
Yeah, thanks, James.